Domain 1, Engagement and Assessment, Skills to Build Rapport. We're going to review basic skills you already have that you can enhance as you learn about building rapport with clients. The first job of a case manager is to engage a reluctant and disbelieving, but nonetheless suffering person in care. Due to the stigma that continues to accrue to mental illness in popular culture, the lack of education or information provided to the lay public regarding psychiatric disorders, and the denial and disbelief that accompanies the onset of many serious illnesses. People often struggle with serious mental illness for many years before coming to understand what they are struggling with is a psychiatric disorder. It then may be another prolonged period before they can muster the courage and trust to accept their need for treatment and support. As a result, community-based case managers cannot assume that clients will come to them of their own volition out of a genuine desire to receive guidance from a mental health expert, or for that matter, a community guide, just as they cannot assume that clients will be appreciative of their efforts to offer assistance when clients do not yet accept or recognize that they need it. Successful building of rapport in behavioral health is based on a mindset that all people have strengths and all can make positive changes, even the most challenged. We view people with compassion and acceptance. We guide, we do not direct. Change comes from within the person, and we form collaborative relationships with the person in which the choice is the individual's. We partner with the client. We believe that people can make changes even during significant challenges in their life and despite their history. We believe that some people are capable of making informed decisions that we will honor and respect. We provide information to clients so they can make informed choices. Sustainable change comes from the individual's self-motivation and self-efficacy, not from the case manager to the client. How to build rapport. Rapport must be a two-way connection between people, so it's not something you can create by yourself. You can, however, learn to stimulate it by following these 6 steps. First, impressions count, and your appearance should help you connect to people, not create a barrier. The basics of good communication include being culturally appropriate, smiling, being relaxed, and remembering people's names. Hold your head up and maintain good posture. Listen carefully and attentively. Don't outstay your welcome when you're at someone's home or out in the community with them. These basic tenets form the foundation of great communication. It will be hard to establish rapport without them, as they will help you establish trust, empathy, and a feeling in people that you are listening to them. Identifying common ground can help establish rapport, so it's okay to use small talk to find something that you both share. Most people like talking about themselves, and the more genuine interest you show in them, the more likely they are to relax and open up. Use open-ended questions to discover personal information about the client. I've attached samples of open-ended questions at the end of this lesson. It's important to be genuine and sincere and avoid overdoing things. Don't make up an interest or try too hard just to create rapport. Not only can this seem desperate or off-putting, but it can also dent your credibility. Here's a note on using humor. Laughter is a great tool for building rapport, but do use humor with care. Not everyone can tell a joke, and what might seem like acceptable sarcasm to you could cause offense to somebody else. If you think there's a possibility that a comment may be taken the wrong way, don't make it. In fact, don't use humor until you get to know the person. Rapport can't grow without human interaction. Our work as case managers working collaboratively to define problems, devise solutions, and design strategies can help bring us closer to the person that we're working with. But remember, we have a role definition. We are not becoming friends to the person. We are developing rapport within our assigned working relationship. The case manager's working relationship is described in the job description and in the role definition of a case manager. The ability to use communication skills that successfully convey and obtain accurate and complete information in a respectful and caring manner is essential in developing positive relationships with both individuals being served and referral sources. A case manager relies on communication to carry out even the most basic job responsibilities. A case manager who has major difficulties communicating with others will have trouble being successful with his or her job. Unfortunately, communicating to others and receiving from others the intended message is a difficult task even for the most experienced case manager. The reason communication is so difficult is that it involves much more than the spoken word. According to A. Barber, author of Louder Than Words, Nonverbal Communication, the total impact of a message breaks down like this: 7% words, 38% vocal, which includes volume, pitch, rhythm, such as that, and 55% body movements, mostly facial expressions. When two persons, A and B, are attempting to communicate with each other, their communication is distorted by their personalities, attitudes, values, belief systems, biases, the assumptions they are making about each other, their experience, background, and so on. A's communication to B flows through A's screen and through B's screen. When B responds to A, B is really responding to what she heard rather than what A might have intended. She shoots her message back to B through her own screen of attitudes, values, and so on, through A's screen. What is often not understood is that the way we get messages through our screens and through another person's screen is often confusing and distorting in and of itself. We add to what we hear, to what we fail to hear, and we distort messages according to the modes that are used to convey messages. Verbal communication refers to the spoken word. The ease with which information is shared verbally is greatly enhanced when the words used are kept as simple as possible and are included in the vocabulary most commonly used by the person listening. It is also helpful to avoid using technical jargon, abbreviated names, or terminology that is unfamiliar to the other party involved in the conversation. The successful case manager will be able to synthesize and succinctly articulate information needed by clients, collaterals, and referral sources. With some individuals, communication barriers may be greater. Projection of the voice and clear enunciation of words can help overcome some of the barriers encountered with individuals who have hearing impairments. Obviously, there are language barriers when the individual attempting to communicate are unable to speak the same language well enough for the words to be understood. Other difficulties encountered in using the verbal mode include the use of jargon, the use of cliches, and the use of specialized vocabulary. It is often said that words have meaning only in context. It can be better said that words only have meaning when they are associated with the people in context. As discussed, the message person A intends to send person B will be interpreted by person B according to their values and perceptions. Research suggests that nonverbal channels also relay important information and that those channels may be even more powerful than what the person actually says. People constantly communicate nonverbally, and this is often referred to as body language. Nonverbal communication includes facial expressions, tones of voice, gestures, eye contact, spatial arrangements, patterns of touch, expressive movement, cultural differences, and other nonverbal acts. Let's take a look at body language. Having a basic knowledge of body language can give case managers more insight into the nonverbal information they send and receive. It should be noted, however, that the validity of messages sent through body language needs to be questioned and interpreted. For instance, a person who sits with his or her arms crossed may be conveying a defensive posture, or they may just be cold. There is ambulation, which we associate different meanings to different ways people carry their bodies from one place to another. How one carries his or her body, like whether they glide, stride, stomp, etc., tells a great deal about who the person is and how they're experiencing their environment. Then there's touching. That's perhaps the most powerful nonverbal communication form. The skin is the body's largest organ, and through the skin we take in a variety of stimuli. We can communicate anger, interest, trust, tenderness, warmth, and a variety of other emotions very potently through touching. People differ, however, in their willingness to touch and be touched. Some people give out nonverbal body signals that say they do not want to be touched, and there are other people who describe themselves and are described by others as touchy-feely. There are many taboos associated with this form of communication. Eye contact. We tend to size each other up in terms of trustworthiness through reactions to each other's eye contact. Try a little experiment with yourself. Remember the last time you were driving down the road and you passed a hitchhiker. The odds are very high that you did not look him in the eye if you passed him up. Sincerity or insincerity, acceptance or avoidance can be powerfully communicated through our eyes. It is not uncommon to feel uncomfortable about looking someone in the eye when talking with them, and it's possible to have too much eye contact with someone. When eye contact becomes staring, it's actually not very good and produces anxiety and may cause someone to lose their train of thought. Eye contact should be sufficient enough to convey an honest interest in the other person, but not to make them feel uncomfortable. The case manager should also be sensitive to the fact that there are cultural differences in how eye contact is perceived. For example, in some cultures, it's considered to be disrespectful to maintain eye contact with someone who is in a position of authority. Now, posturing is another type of body language. This is how one postures the body when seated or standing, and constitutes a set of potential signals that may communicate how one is experiencing his environment. A person who folds his arms and legs and leans away or has a rigid posture is often said to be defensive or closed. A slumped posture may indicate the person has low spirits, is fatigued, or feels inferior, whereas an erect posture may show high spirits, high energy, and confidence. Leaning forward with a relaxed posture may imply openness, interest, and a willingness to listen. Tics are also a type of body language. The involuntary nervous spasms of the body can be key to one's feelings of being threatened. A number of people stammer or jerk when they're being threatened, but these mannerisms, like other forms of body language, can be easily misinterpreted. So be careful. Subvocals. We say when we're trying to find a word. We say a lot of non-word things in order to carry meaning to other persons. We stammer, we hum, we grunt, we groan, and so on. These subvocal noises are not words, but they may carry meaning. There is also distancing. Each person is said to have a psychological space around them. You know, your personal space. If a person perceives that their personal space has been invaded, they tend to become tense or nervous and may back away. We tend to place distance between ourselves and others according to the kind of relationships that we have and what our motives are towards each other. Individuals who have a close relationship require less personal space with one another than individuals who are new acquaintances or have an adversarial relationship. Gesturing. We carry out a great deal of meaning between each other through the use of gestures. But gestures do not mean the same thing to all people. Sometimes people attach a different emphasis or meaning to the hand signals that we give out. For example, the A-OK sign, where a circle is formed by the thumb and the first forefinger, or the "we're number one" signal are considered obscene in some countries. We give emphasis to our words and we attempt to clarify our meaning through the use of gestures. There is also vocalism or inflection. Vocalization and inflection refer to the way words are expressed. Variations in intonation and pitch of the voice can change the meaning of words. Take the sentence, "I love my children." The meaning of that sentence changes depending on the inflection used when they're spoken. For example, if the emphasis is on the first word, "I love my children," the implication is that someone else doesn't. If the emphasis is on the second word, "I love my children," a different implication is given, perhaps that some of their behavior gets on my nerves. If the emphasis is placed on the third word, "I love my children," the implication is that someone else's children do not receive the same affection. And if the emphasis is placed on the final word, "I love my children," a fourth implication may be drawn, and that is that there are people whom I do not love. So, the way we carry our words vocally often determines the meaning that another person is likely to infer from our message. In the current age, communication with clients and referral sources is not limited to verbal and nonverbal communication only. Case managers also communicate in written form, like letters, emails, authorizations, and by telephone, and may do so more than meeting face-to-face. Each type of communication has its own set of suggestions to make the communication more effective and sensitive to the others involved in that exchange of information. One major difference in telephone and in-person conversation is the loss of body language to help get the intended message across, to help interpret the recipient's feedback. When words are written in letters or emails, the communication becomes one-way instead of two-way, and the value of voice inflection is lost as well. Case managers would be wise to keep these differences in mind and to learn more about making these methods of communication more effective. Actively listening means listening to words, tones of voice, expressions used, and listening to what is not said. Often the things that the person does not say can be very important in relating their sensitivity about that information. We must make an active attempt to understand the other person, respecting his or her uniqueness and frame of reference. Part of this understanding can only occur when we listen. Listening is an art, but by achieving good listening skills, we can inspire openness and trust with those with whom we seek to communicate. Here are 3 generally accepted rules for effective listening. 1. Listen with the intent to understand. Put aside your own paradigms and listen with an open mind. Don't just wait for the moment in the conversation where you can reply, "Oh, I know exactly how you feel. I had that same thing happen to me." Rule 2. Recognize your use of the primary levels of listening that each of us practice. Ignoring is not listening. Pretending to listen is like responding with phrases such as, "Yes, right." Selective listening is hearing only some parts of the communication. Listening attentively to the specific words but not listening to the message is another way of listening. Think about those 4. Do you fall into any of those categories sometimes? Rule 3. Develop the skill of empathic listening. Take time to understand the other person's frame of reference, that's their values and their beliefs, and actively listen for the feelings they are conveying so you can define the true meaning of the message. The implications are clear. For communication to occur, there must be a two-way interchange of feelings, ideals, and values. One-way communication is highly inefficient in that there is no way to determine what is heard and what is intended. The office memo is a form of one-way communication, which is perhaps the least effective medium for transmitting meaning. A second implication is that for true communication to be experienced, it is necessary that there be a feedback process inherent in the communication effort. There needs to be a continuous flow back and forth among people attempting to communicate, sharing what they have heard from each other. The third implication is that the individual person needs to become acutely aware of the range of signals which he or she is emitting at any given moment. He or she can learn that by soliciting feedback from the people with whom he or she is attempting to share meaning. Listening is one of the most effective tools of communication. The primary way we show individuals that we are listening is through effective use of reflection. At the same time, we give individuals an opportunity to respond to what we have heard. This maintains the flow of conversation and can build upon understanding by allowing the person to tell you if you have understood what they are saying. Empathy is seeking to understand the individual and their view of their situation and goals. This ends the lesson on skills to build rapport. Please complete the test after reviewing the attachment with sample open-ended questions. A passing score of 70% is required.